This is perfect for the New York Islanders. With a new general manager in Mathew Barzal and a logjam of left-handed defensemen, writers have pointed out that one of the first moves Mathew Barzal is going to have to make is deciding what to do with the left side of that defense. We're going to break it all down on this episode of Islanders Digest, including a likely trade that can really benefit the Islanders in the future and also now really bringing in younger left-handed defenseman. Before we get into that, I do want to point out that 78% of you who watch these videos are not yet subscribed to the channel. If you're an Islander fan, you want more Islanders content just like this, what are you waiting for? Subscribe, it's free. Now let's really get into talking about the situation with the left-handed defense of the New York Islanders. Now, interestingly enough, a part of this situation is last season, every single left-handed defenseman the Islanders had on their starting roster got injured at the same time. You really cannot make that up. It was an absolute disaster and really kind of derailed the Islanders season. But one benefit we got out of that is we got to see Isaiah George step up into the NHL level and show that he's pretty much almost ready to play NHL hockey. Now, he did need to go back to the AHL for some more seasoning, but at one point when he was playing his best with the Islanders, Isaiah George logged 24 minutes of ice time. And sure, part of that was due to just the fact there were so many injuries with the Islanders defense, but this also shows that this is a player who is ready to play at the NHL level, and it makes the Islanders situation interesting, especially when you already have defensemen like Adam Pelech, you have Alex Romanov, you have Scott Perunovich, and you also have the opportunity to pick Matthew Schaefer first overall, which is what I expect the Islanders to do. We're going to talk more about the draft in later videos, but in this video, we're going to, again, assume the Islanders are going to pick the #1 ranked prospect in Matthew Schaefer, who is also a left-handed defenseman, which really builds a massive logjam with the Islanders having 5 defensemen who could really play the left side, and that's not even including some other prospects who are really getting closer to the NHL level. And we're going to talk about some moves the Islanders can be making to kind of both alleviate that logjam of defensemen and also really develop the rest of the team. Now, notably, Mike Riley also played the left-handed side this season. We're not really going to talk about Mike Riley in this video, because I fully expect Mike Riley to be let go of in free agency. Let me know in the comments what you think of that. I know a lot of fans do like Mike Riley. Frankly, I love Mike Riley. His story was incredible this season, watching him come back from that heart procedure. I just don't know if there's a fit with him on the Islanders. Wouldn't be disappointed if they find a way to bring him back, but again, that would just make this even more complicated. This is what we're going to talk about. The Islanders have plenty of both veteran left-handed defenseman, and also a couple young rookies who are going to be making it up soon. But the big trade candidates when it comes to the left-handed defenseman the Islanders have are going to be Alexander Romanov and Adam Pelech. And frankly, considering Romanov is 25, an RFA under team control, it would make almost no sense to trade him unless there's a situation where Darsh does not like his game for the type of roster he's trying to build, in which case then I would not be upset if Darsh decided to move on from Romanov. But just based on how he at most points was the Islanders' best defenseman last year, I don't expect him to be moved. Although I will say he probably does have some pretty similar value to Adam Pelech. So with the trade we're going to be talking about later on in this video, I guess Romanov is also a candidate for that trade, although it makes more sense for the Islanders to move on from Adam Pelech. I mean, 5.75 average annual value. By the way, if you want to read this full article, it's posted by Eyes on Isles, so be sure to check that out. I'm going to link it in the description below if you want to check out the article. But let's really get into Pelech's numbers and why I think it makes a lot of sense for the Islanders to trade him before I talk about what I think they can get for Adam Pelech. Adam Pelech, as we know, is a great defenseman for the New York Islanders. I mean, back when the Islanders were going on their cup runs, I think it truly was on the back of Adam Pelech, and I really appreciate all he has done for this franchise. But let's face it, Adam Pelech is getting older. He is now 30, going to his 31-year-old NHL season, and he suffered from injuries. And I do want to point out, even when he has suffered through injuries, he still has played the majority of the season every year. But pretty much he's, at this point, playing 60 games a year. And really, you can see the drop-off of the Islanders' play in those 20 games every single season where he does not play. It's pretty staggering. Points-wise, Adam Pelech is a defensive defenseman, but he is pretty much good for 20 points a season. Kind of crazy that he hadn't scored a single goal last year, considering how much he plays for the Islanders, 21 minutes a game. And that 21 minutes is why I think Pelech is going to have so much value for other teams. Yes, he plays 60 games a year, likely has injuries almost every season. Do want to note, though, he's almost always available at the end of the season where a team's going to want to be going into the playoffs. And this is a type of defenseman that you've seen teams trade for time in and time again. They're very valuable. I mean, Toronto Maple Leafs are desperate for defensemen like this. We're not going to be talking about a trade to the Toronto Maple Leafs. I don't think any Islander fans want to help the Toronto Maple Leafs, but that just shows there are plenty of teams who would pretty much do anything for a defenseman like Adam Pelech. Maybe not go as far as that, but they would definitely be willing to give up good assets to bring in Adam Pelech into their roster. Do want to note really quickly here and take a bigger look at the Islanders' current pros on defense. Adam Pelech gets paid $5.75 million a year, and he does have a partial no trade clause, which is definitely going to be playing into this situation. Although I do want to note I think it is a 16-team no trade clause or 17-team no trade, so he can be traded to half the league, which is definitely going to make this a little easier when it comes to trading him as opposed to another player. And again, the Islanders are currently not content, and that's the big reason why I think it makes sense to trade Pelech. If the Islanders were a bit closer to where in a year you could see them contending for the Stanley Cup, I'm not talking about playoffs, I'm talking about the Stanley Cup, then you probably would want to keep Pelech because he showed how important he can be at shutting down players in the playoffs. But the big thing with Pelech is when you really look at this Islanders roster, in reality, this is going to be a team who's really going to be trying to contend for the Stanley Cup again, in my opinion, in 2 to 3 seasons. And at that point, Adam Pelech is likely going to regress further. So he does not have as much value for the Islanders as a team that is trying to make an impact or really trying to make the playoffs. Now, I do know the Islanders are going to try to be competitive next season. Doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be a failure of a season if they miss the playoffs, while other teams that we're going to talk about definitely have a lot more pressure when it comes to making that jump back into the playoffs. Also, notably, when it comes to left-handed defensemen, again, we talked about Isaiah George. Again, Mike Riley is likely not going to be kept. Alexander Romanov, likely going to toss a bit of money to keep him, which is another reason why it makes sense for the Islanders to move Pelech to kind of clear that salary cap. In many ways, Alexander Romanov really replaced Pelech when it comes to effectiveness on the left side. And again, you do need 3 solid left-handed defensemen with Isaiah George on this team and the addition of likely drafting Matthew Schaefer. Now, there's also no rush because even if Matthew Schaefer is drafted or if the plan is to bring up Isaiah George, that doesn't have to be done right away. In fact, it makes sense if you draft Schaefer to leave him in the OHL for a season. So this is not even though it's likely the Islanders are going to have to make a move on defense soon, especially when it comes to whether or not they want to extend a qualifying offer to somebody like Perunovich. That is something they're going to have to figure out right away as free agency is coming up. But an Adam Pelech trade, well, I do think it would happen in the draft just because trades like that typically happen on the draft because it's easier to move around salary cap. It's not necessarily the case, especially now too where the salary cap is going up. You're going to see a lot more teams going into the deadline who are going to have a lot more space than they typically do, at least next season, which is definitely going to make that really interesting. But I also want to point out, while we're talking about the players who've already played NHL games for the Islanders on the left-handed side, that there are also players such as Samuel Bullock, who the Islanders really need to make decisions on. Samuel Bullock is 24 years old now. He's a restricted free agent. I do want to really point out some of his stats because this is a player who's pretty much proven all he can in the NHL, but he has not seemed to get a look in the NHL. With that deal expiring, the Islanders are likely either going to have to give him a shot in the NHL or allow him to really move on, as that's going to be a one-way contract. So we'll see what happens with that. I don't see if he goes on waivers, teams passing up on Bulldog. That is something we're going to have to watch moving forward. And makes this decision even more complicated. And quickly also want to note, prospects like Hale Audulus and also Jesse Pulkkinen are also on the left side. So while the Islanders really did struggle with issues on in the injury front when it comes to the left side this season, there are more reinforcements coming, which is reassuring. When it comes to Bolduc, really quickly, again, this is a guy who had 35 points in the AHL as a defenseman. Really not much more for him to grow there. He did not look great when the NHL, but he also seemed to really clash with Patrick Wall, and I really wonder if perhaps this is a defenseman that likely in a separate trade gets moved for another struggling prospect. There definitely is some potential here, definitely a team that will be interested in a player like Bulldog. Again, he only is 24, and he has a lot of experience trying to make it in the NHL, and hasn't been horrendous at times, but it was not a fit with Patrick Waugh. He played one game, made one turnover, and he was done with Bulldog, which really led to the rise of Isaiah George. Really quickly, I want to talk about what the Islanders can get in a trade for Adam Pelech. And for me, one team that really lights up as a potential suitor for Adam Pelech is the Nashville Predators, especially considering they are run by GM Barry Trotz, who was absolutely in love with Adam Pelech while he was on the Islanders. Now, typically, you don't see a team like Nashville, who's drafting 3rd overall, kind of go for a defenseman like Pelech, but Nashville's in a really odd place where they signed Steven Stamkos and a couple other veteran players, including Brady Shea, 2 long-term contracts last season, and even though they are towards the bottom of the league, this is a team that has higher expectations, and Pelech is the type of guy that can elevate a defensive core and really get you to the next level, which I really think is the goal when it comes to Nashville. Now, I know Islander fans are really excited about their 5th overall pick. Sorry, not picking 3rd overall. They were the 3rd worst team. They're picking 5th overall because Utah and the Islanders won the lottery. But you can really see this team. Obviously, I know a lot of Islander fans want that 5th overall pick for the chance to draft James Higgins. That is not going to happen. I'll tell you right now, Adam Pelech is not going to Nashville for a 5th overall pick. That's absolutely ridiculous. I've seen that on Twitter. But you can see a scenario. Their other 2 picks in the first round are 20 and 23. Where they move one of those picks for defensemen like Adam Pelech, and also the Islanders take back a contract that perhaps they don't love, where Darsh sees more value in that player than Nashville does. That is definitely a trade that could work for both sides. And I also see Romanov as an even better fit for the Nashville Predators, although I don't think the Islanders are interested in parting with him. But let me know, would you do that trade in the comments below, trading Adam Pelech for a 23rd overall pick and also one of the players on Nashville who likely has a little less value, just to kind of fix up some of the salary cap differences. Still, I think the Islanders would be relieving themselves of some salary cap space in that trade. Love to know your thoughts below in the comments. As always, if you haven't already, be sure to subscribe to the channel. My name is Patrick Nilan. This is Islanders Digest. Let's go Islanders.